Yuna piloted her cloaked Raven-class dropship towards the looming Vartek dreadnought that hung in space before her. According to intelligence reports, this kilometer-long capital ship belonged to the Vartek, a hostile insectoid alien race that had recently attacked several human colonies near the border of their space. It was time they learned exactly what the human race was capable of. As she approached the ominous, beetle-like craft, she reviewed the mission details on a datapad. Somehow she had to infiltrate the dreadnought, disable its reactor core, deliver a warning to the Vartek, and exfiltrate undetected. It would be no easy task, but she had confidence in her abilities as one of the human special forces' top infiltration specialists. The Raven's advanced stealth systems and cold plasma drives allowed it to drift up to the dreadnought's hangar unnoticed. Yuna waited patiently for a supply ship to depart, leaving the force field open temporarily. She piloted the Raven through the gap and found a darkened corner to land behind stacks of supply crates. Now, the real fun began. After a quick systems check on the specialized mech suit she wore, Yuna engaged its thermoptic camouflage. This would keep her hidden from normal Vartek vision. For additional precaution, she also activated the noise cancellation field built into the suit to muffle any sounds of her movement. Completely cloaked both visually and audibly, she disembarked from her ship. With her HUD mapping a route through the maze-like corridors, Yuna set off swiftly but cautiously towards the reactor room. The suit's compiled data on Vartek physiology allowed its onboard computers to highlight potential threats, patrols, sensors, and surveillance devices. She slipped by them unseen like a ghost. Finally, she reached the heavily reinforced blast door that secured the reactor room. Vartek engineers inside worked diligently, unaware of the infiltrator in their midst. Yuna's suit gloves had electronic lockpicks built into the fingertips. She reached up and interfaced with the door's access panel, using the lockpicks to bypass its security. The suit's AI quietly worked through encryption codes until the panel flashed green and granted access. Yuna readied her wrist-mounted fusion pulse cannon and stepped through. Chaos erupted as she blasted the first unfortunate engineer who crossed her path. Alarms blared to life and the other Vartek scattered in all directions, hissing and chittering in their alien tongue. Yuna swiftly targeted vital control consoles around the room, melting them into slag with pinpoint fire from her cannon. Secondary explosions erupted from ruptured power conduits. Lights flickered as the dreadnought's power systems faltered. But Yuna knew the mission was not yet complete. She made her way to the reactor core, a pulsating sphere of blue Cherenkov radiation encased in electromagnetic fields. She bypassed safeties and overloaded the magnetic bottle, causing a rampant cascade of antimatter collisions and runaway fission within the core. Alarms wailed even louder as the reactor's output surged out of control. An ominous rumble went through the ship's superstructure as the meltdown began. Now it was time to deliver her message. Yuna patched her suit's comm system into the Vartek network and broadcast on all frequencies. Attention Vartek invaders. This is your first and only warning. Earth is not to be trifled with. Turn back now or be destroyed. With the reactor sabotaged and the warning delivered, Yuna hurried back through the corridors towards her hidden dropship. She gunned the engines the instant she was aboard and blasted from the hangar just as internal explosions began ripping through the dreadnought. She put some distance between her and the dying warship before turning to watch her handiwork on sensors. The hulking dreadnought erupted in a series of secondary detonations from its compromised reactor core before coming apart completely in a silent white flash. Yuna smiled in satisfaction. The Vartek would think twice before encroaching on human territory again after this. She set course for home, ready to deliver her report. Yuna's cloaked Raven dropship glided smoothly into the hangar bay of Valiant, one of humanity's major space stations near the border. As she disembarked, Yuna was greeted by Commander Nora Ross, head of the Valiant Defense Force. "That was some fine work taking out that Vartek dreadnought," said Nora. "With their flagship destroyed, we've bought ourselves some breathing room while they reorganize their fleet." "Just doing my duty, ma'am," Yuna replied as she removed her mech suit helmet. Those bugs needed to be taught a lesson about messing with humans. Before they could continue, blaring klaxons echoed through the bay. The station AI's voice announced over the intercom, "Proximity alert! Multiple Vartek drive signatures detected emerging from hyperspace." Cursing under her breath, Nora motioned for Yuna to follow her to the station's command center. Yuna's infiltration mission had bought them some time, but it seemed the Vartek were back faster than expected. On the view screen, hundreds of Vartek warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. A whole invasion armada now surrounded Valiant, outgunning the station's defenses 10-1. Squadrons of nimble Vartek fighters streamed from the hangar bays of the largest capital ships. How did they mobilize such a massive fleet so quickly? Nora wondered out loud. Your mission must have riled up the entire Vartek hive. They want revenge, said Yuna grimly. This is going to get ugly. The Vartek armada opened up with everything they had. Massive plasma volleys and particle beams impacted Valiant's shields as endless streams of fighters swooped in to attack. Yuna hurried to the hangar and jumped into a heavy mech suit, known as the Paladin, which specialized in space combat. The instant she rocketed from Valiant's launch tube, she was jinking and juking to avoid blistering fire from the enemy fighters. With practiced precision, she picked them off with bursts from the Paladin's neutron repeaters while leading them away from the station's vulnerable zones. The Vartek fighters were fast, though, and swarmed aggressively to overwhelm the lone mech suit. Yuna, we need you at the aft fuel storage bay immediately, crackled Nora's urgent voice over the radio. The Vartek have breached the outer hull and are attempting to sabotage our fuel supplies. If you don't stop them in time, this whole station is going up. I'm on my way, Yuna responded, boosting towards the station's rear section while blasting pursuing bug fighters out of her way. She reached the fuel bay and found it crawling with Vartek sappers. They were already using acid torches to burrow into the giant tanks. Yuna let loose a withering hail of plasma, cutting down the saboteurs before they could detonate the volatile fuel. Fuel storage secured, reported Yuna, but unless we figure out a plan to deal with their capital ships, Valiant is done for. A desperate idea sprang to mind, an all-or-nothing gamble. Commander, buy me as much time as you can. I think I know how we can turn this around. Roger that, came Nora's reply. We're counting on you, Yuna. Do what you have to do. Yuna sprinted through Valiant's corridors, headed for the mech fabrication bay. She knew the station kept an experimental demolition mech in storage, codenamed Atlas. If she could get to it, she might just be able to even these odds. Built around a 100-ton servo-assisted frame, the Atlas was equipped with tactical nuclear warheads, extremely potent but rarely authorized for use due to collateral damage concerns. Right now, though, collateral damage was the least of Yuna's worries. She reached the fabrication bay and jumped into the menacing Atlas mech as it rose up from the floor on hydraulics. As the cockpit closed around her, she initiated the startup sequence, feeling the hum of high-yield explosives coming online. The Atlas stomped onto the launch elevator, carrying Yuna up to the exterior flight deck. She braced herself as the elevator doors opened to chaos. The station shuddered under constant bombardment and roving squads of Vartek fighters streaked by. Striding the Atlas out into the maelstrom, Yuna gritted her teeth as mass driver rounds and beam weapons hammered the mech's thick armor plating. While nowhere near enough to breach the Atlas's defenses, the barrage slowed her advance. She needed to reach open space. Activating the Atlas's grav thrusters and main plasma engines, Yuna boosted away from the station. With some breathing room now, she scanned the swirling melee and picked out the largest Vartek capital ship, a spiny behemoth easily 50 times the mass of Valiant. That would be her target. Yuna pushed the Atlas to full thrust on an intercept course, stomping across the hull of the alien warship as its gun turrets swiveled to meet this new threat. Molten metal erupted where mass driver rounds impacted, but failed to pierce the mech's armor. Reaching the ship's relatively vulnerable aft section housing its plasma drives and fuel cells, Yuna armed a spread of nuclear warheads and braced the Atlas against the hull. She initiated the detonation sequence and then fired the thrusters to maximum, putting distance between her and the doomed warship. The Atlas's onboard sensors flickered with interference as the nukes ignited in sequence. Then came the ship's death knell, a rapid series of eye-searing flashes, followed by a shockwave that rattled the Atlas even at this distance. The massive capital ship split open like an egg before secondary explosions rippled through its remains. Seeing their largest warship obliterated, panic spread through the Vartek fleet. They began retreating in disarray from Valiant's now uncontested guns. The tide had turned. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall," Yuna muttered to herself in satisfaction. Now, it was the Vartek's turn to reconsider if humanity was worth the trouble. Yuna docked the Atlas back in its bay before making her way to Valiant's command center. The crew was monitoring Vartek communications channels and fleet movements. "It appears they are divided on whether to continue aggression against us after losing so many ships," said Nora. "You buying us that victory may have taken the fight out of them." "If they're smart, they'll stay in their own territory from now on," said Yuna. "But I say we take advantage of their disarray and hit them directly where it hurts." Nora nodded, seeming to read Yuna's intentions. "I'm inclined to agree. If we can deliver a decisive blow right to their homeworld, it may cause them to reconsider further unprovoked attacks." She turned to the tactical station and pointed out a planet on the star map, Vartek Prime. "Yuna, prep the Atlas for an extended hyperspace jump to these coordinates. I want their leadership to understand there are consequences for threatening humanity." After preparations were complete, Yuna boarded the Atlas as it was loaded onto a hyper-capable transport ship. Days later, the transport vessel dropped back into normal space in high orbit above Vartek Prime, an ominous world shrouded in hazy atmospheric fungus. Yuna deployed in the Atlas as the transport jumped away. She oriented the mech for open descent through the upper atmosphere. Entry heat flared across the Atlas's shields briefly before fading as dense orange clouds swallowed her up. Breaking through the cloud layer, Yuna activated the Atlas terrain tracking scanners, mapping the expansive capital city below, a sprawling hive of structured fungal growths and biomechanical towers. Arming the full payload of tactical nukes, Yuna decided to give the Vartek a small sample of humanity's capabilities. She dropped the Atlas into a punishing freefall, releasing the nukes in sequence to airburst right over the city's center. Spires shattered and collapsed under the nuclear onslaught as concentric shockwaves rippled out, obliterating military targets first. The Atlas's armor glowed from residual heat as Yuna pulled up and surveyed the aftermath from high altitude. Where the capital center once stood was now a flaming crater. It was time to deliver the message behind this destruction. Yuna locked onto broadcast frequencies used by Vartek leadership and sent a transmission in their own language. "People of Vartek, your unprovoked attacks end now lest you desire your own annihilation. Though we could easily wipe your kind from the universe, we have chosen mercy by avoiding civilian casualties. Let our restraint not be mistaken for weakness. Respect our borders and humanity will leave you be." Having made her point abundantly clear, Yuna turned the Atlas skyward and engaged the thrusters to escape velocity, not wanting to overstay her welcome if Vartek reinforcements came to investigate the attack. She plotted a course back to Valiant, satisfied that the message was delivered. Upon returning to Valiant after her surgical strike on the Vartek homeworld, Yuna received a hero's welcome. But the jubilation was short-lived as long-range sensors detected a massive Vartek fleet mobilizing on the outskirts of the system. Thousands of ships by initial estimates. "It seems we really kicked the hornet's nest," said Nora grimly as she analyzed the sensor data. "Our attack drew practically their entire navy here looking for revenge." Yuna nodded. "If intelligence is accurate, that's nearly their whole standing fleet converging on us. I'd say 90% at least." "Then we have no choice but to take the fight to them now, on our terms," said Nora. She opened a priority channel to Earth Fleet Command and began issuing emergency directives. Within hours, the entire human battle group from Earth and Mars showed up. Hundreds of capital ships and support vessels. They formed into attack wings around Valiant just as the sprawling Vartek armada entered optimal weapons range. The two mighty fleets closed in a thunderous clash of plasma projectors, mass accelerators, and railguns, filling space with blinding exchanges of energy and molten metal. Human and Vartek fighters alike streaked through the chaos, hunting their counterparts. In the cockpit of the Atlas mech attached to Valiant's hull, Yuna targeted enemy cruisers with tactical nukes, vaporizing them instantly. But the Vartek responded by converging in endless waves, threatening to overwhelm the station through sheer numbers. "Yuna, at this rate our defenses are not going to hold," warned Nora over the radio. "Their advantage in ships is too much." "Just keep them occupied a little longer," said Yuna. "I have a plan to take out their flagship and scatter them." Yuna maneuvered the Atlas off of Valiant and activated the heavy mech's quad thrusters, making straight for the Vartek command ship, an enormous multi-kilometer-wide beast. Weaving through oblivion-bound ships and weapons fire, Yuna reached the flagship's underside. She targeted anti-meteor defenses and jettisoned the Atlas's remaining payload of nukes, sticking them right to the hull. Then she burned hard for Valiant again, maxing the engines. Moments later, white-hot nova flared behind the Atlas. Yuna's sensors went wild as the flagship's reactors went supercritical before rupturing entirely. The surrounding armada collapsed in disarray without their leader. Sensing blood in the water, the human fleet pressed the assault, mopping up the confused Vartek ships and driving the survivors into retreat. Victory belonged to humanity. In the aftermath, Yuna looked out upon the battlefield now littered with shattered ships. Humankind had faced its greatest trial, but through unity and resolve emerged stronger than before. None would ever dare threaten them again. Back aboard Valiant, the command crew was abuzz with celebration. Nora placed a grateful hand on Yuna's shoulder. "Once again, you helped turn near defeat into decisive victory. All of humanity owes you their thanks. When future generations look back on this, your heroism will stand as an inspiration to others." Yuna smiled shyly. "I was just doing my duty to protect Earth and its citizens, but I appreciate the acknowledgement." She joined the crew in watching the last Vartek stragglers disappear into hyperspace. After so much loss, she hoped a lasting peace could be forged between their two civilizations. All had learned the high cost of war this day.